The day I handed over Sweet Dreams Bakery to my sister, the scent of vanilla and warm brioche couldn't mask the bitterness in my heart. I stood in my kitchen, no, Emma's kitchen now, watching her struggle with our grandmother's signature apple turnover recipe. Those same turnovers had put Sweet Dreams on the map 3 years ago, after I'd returned from my training at the Culinary Institute of America. My name is Sarah, and until yesterday, I was living my dream. Now I'm watching it crumble like an overmixed meringue. Sarah, honey, this is for the best, Mom Linda said, placing her manicured hand on my shoulder. I shrugged it off, my attention fixed on Emma's clumsy attempts to recreate my signature pastry. Even from across the kitchen, my professionally trained, I could spot every mistake. The dough wasn't laminated properly, the apple filling was too wet, and she'd completely missed the crucial step of chilling between folds. Emma has the business acumen this place needs, Dad Robert added, his voice carrying that familiar CEO tone he'd perfected over decades in corporate America. With her Wall Street experience and your recipes, this place will thrive. I turned to face them, channeling the composure I'd learned in high-end restaurant kitchens. My recipes aren't part of the deal. The silence that followed was heavier than a failed souffle. Emma's hands froze mid-fold, sending apple filling dripping onto the gleaming stainless steel counter I'd saved for months to import from Italy. "What do you mean?" she demanded, her perfectly manicured nails, fresh from her weekly corporate manicure, now sticky with filling. "The deal was for the bakery, not my recipes," I cut in, moving to grab my recipe book from its place beside the industrial mixer. "Those are mine. They've always been mine." "Don't be ridiculous," Mom snapped, her voice sharp as a paring knife. "Those recipes belong to the bakery. You can't just, actually, I can." I clutched the worn leather-bound book to my chest, feeling the familiar texture of its pages against my CIA-trained hands. "I never wrote them into the business assets. Check the paperwork your corporate lawyers had me sign." Dad's face reddened like an overripe tomato. "This is absurd, Sarah. You're acting like a child." "A child?" I laughed, but it tasted as bitter as burnt caramel. "I built this place from nothing. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, of testing recipes, until my feet ached and my hands were raw. I invested every penny I had, even my culinary school savings, and you two convinced me to sign it over to Emma because she has an MBA and investment banking experience?" "In the bakery kitchen. Sarah, please." Emma stepped forward, making a show of wiping her hands on her crisp white apron, which I noticed she was wearing more like a fashion statement than a tool of the trade. "We're family. We can make this work together." "Family?" The word tasted sour in my mouth. Family doesn't manipulate each other into giving up their dreams. Family doesn't. The familiar chime of our vintage doorbell interrupted my tirade. I took a deep breath, summoning the professional demeanor I'd perfected during my years in high-end restaurants, and walked out to greet Mrs. Peterson, my most loyal customer since opening day. "Sarah, dear, those apple turnovers you promised." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Peterson." I shot a pointed glance toward the kitchen where Emma was still mangling the lamination process. "We're having some technical difficulties today. Maybe try again next week?" Mrs. Peterson's face fell, reminding me of a deflated souffle. "Oh, but I was counting on them for my bridge club. Your turnovers are the only reason they let me host. I'm sure Emma will have something wonderful for you, Mom interjected, suddenly appearing beside me with her perfect public smile. She's taking over the bakery. Sarah is moving on to other opportunities. The confusion on Mrs. Peterson's face mirrored the chaos in my heart. But, but your apple turnovers will no longer be available, I finished, my voice cracking like the top of a creme brulee. I'm sorry. As Mrs. Peterson left empty-handed, I watched through the kitchen window as Emma attempted another batch. The dough was wrong again, too tough, not enough butter, and completely missing the crucial temperature control I'd learned during my externship in France. She'd never get it right because she didn't understand that baking wasn't about following steps on a page. It was about feeling the dough, understanding the chemistry, knowing that the secret was in the precise folding technique and the pinch of nutmeg that only a trained palate would expect. This is madness, Dad declared, running his hands through his steel gray hair. Sarah, you have to help her. The morning rush starts in less than an hour. I picked up my leather messenger bag from behind the counter, tucked my recipe book, the one Grandma had given me when I got accepted to CIA, safely inside, and headed for the door. No, Dad, I don't. Not anymore. Where are you going? Mom called after me, panic creeping into her usually controlled voice. Home. Then maybe I'll call Ashley about that position at her cafe. I paused at the door, taking one last look at my dream. The vintage French display cases I'd restored myself. The hand-painted sign I'd commissioned from a local artist. The warm, honey-toned walls I'd chosen to match the color of perfectly baked bread. Good luck with the business plan, Emma. I'm sure your MBA and Wall Street experience will help you figure it out. Walking away. As I walked away from Sweet Dreams Bakery, the morning sun warming my face, I heard the distinctive clatter of a baking sheet hitting the floor, followed by Emma's frustrated cry. A small, vindictive part of me, the part that had endured countless hours of corporate strategy lectures from Dad during family dinners, smiled. They wanted the bakery? Fine. But my recipes, my grandmother's legacy, my years of perfecting each technique through culinary school and beyond, those were coming with me. Let them figure out how to run an artisanal bakery with an MBA and a business plan. 2 months later, at Ashley's Cafe. 2 months into working at Ashley's Cafe, I was finally starting to feel like myself again. The morning rush had just ended, and I was wiping down the counter when Ashley emerged from the kitchen, her chef's coat dusted with flour, and her face beaming. Your lemon squares are officially our best seller, she announced, waving the sales report like a victory flag. We sold out before noon again. I smiled, but before I could respond, the bell above the door chimed. My stomach dropped as Victoria Dixon strutted in, her Louboutin heels clicking against the hardwood floor like a metronome counting down to disaster. Well, well, she drawled, her red lips curling into a smirk that could curdle cream. If it isn't the fallen pastry chef herself. How the mighty have tumbled. What do you want, Victoria? I kept wiping the counter, refusing to give her the satisfaction of eye contact. I'd dealt with enough pretentious food critics during my restaurant days to know how to handle her type. Oh, just checking out the competition. Though I suppose you're hardly that anymore. She leaned against the counter, her designer blazer probably worth more than a month's worth of premium vanilla beans. I drove past Sweet Dreams this morning. Quite the change in clientele, or should I say, lack thereof. Ashley stepped forward, her usually sunny disposition clouding over. We're actually quite busy here, Victoria. Unless you're planning to order something. Actually, Victoria pulled out a business card that probably cost more than my first set of professional knives. I have a proposition for you, Sarah. Your sister's doing a spectacular job of running that bakery into the ground. I'm offering to buy you out. Your recipes, your techniques, everything. Name your price. At Ashley's Cafe, confrontation. I stopped wiping and finally looked up, meeting Victoria's calculating gaze. My recipes aren't for sale. Don't be stupid, Victoria scoffed, her voice dripping with condescension like over-reduced caramel. Everyone knows those were your grandmother's recipes. They made Sweet Dreams what it was. With my restaurant empire and your recipes, we could. I said no. I crumpled her business card and tossed it in the recycling bin where it belonged. My grandmother taught me more than just recipes. She taught me about loyalty. Loyalty? Victoria's laugh could have shattered sugar work. To the family that stabbed you in the back? Please. The bell chimed again, and a tall man in a pristine chef's coat walked in. I recognized him immediately, Mark, the owner of Bella Luna, the Italian restaurant down the street. He'd been coming in regularly since I started working here, always ordering the same cappuccino and whatever seasonal pastry I'd created that week. "Everything okay here?" he asked, his experienced chef's eyes darting between Victoria and me, assessing the situation like he would a kitchen during service. "Just fine." Victoria straightened up, smoothing her designer skirt. "I was just leaving. Think about my offer, Sarah. Loyalty doesn't pay the bills." As Victoria clicked her way out, Mark took her place at the counter, his presence bringing with it the familiar comfort of professional kitchen camaraderie. I couldn't help but overhear. "You're the former owner of Sweet Dreams?" I nodded, suddenly very interested in reorganizing the coffee cups, their ceramic clinks filling the awkward silence. I knew something was different. I used to get my morning pastries from Sweet Dreams, but lately, he shook his head, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "Let's just say I've been coming here instead." "The usual?" Ashley asked him, already reaching for a cappuccino cup with the practiced efficiency of a seasoned cafe owner. "Actually," Mark cleared his throat, and I detected the subtle shift in his tone that I'd learned to recognize during my years in professional kitchens, the one that meant business was about to mix with pleasure. "I came to talk business. My restaurant's dessert menu needs help. I've been sampling your lemon squares, Sarah. They're incredible. Reminds me of the pastries I had during my training in Florence." In Ashley's Cafe, business proposition. I felt my cheeks warm at the compliment from a chef of his caliber. "Thanks, but I'm not really. I'm not offering to buy your recipes," he said quickly, his tone carrying the straightforward honesty I'd come to appreciate in professional kitchens. "I'm proposing a collaboration. Your desserts served at Bella Luna. We split the profits, and you maintain full creative control and ownership of your recipes. I respect the craft too much to ask for anything else." Ashley squealed behind me, nearly dropping her order pad. "Sarah, that's perfect. You could use my kitchen during off hours to prep. You know I've got all the professional equipment you need." I hesitated, thinking about the stack of bills on my kitchen counter. Working at Ashley's was wonderful, but it barely covered my rent and student loan payments from CIA. I'd need to think about it. Of course. Mark pulled out his card, a simple, professional one that spoke of real culinary credentials rather than corporate posturing. Take your time. But just so you know, I've heard rumors that Sweet Dreams is struggling. Your sister tried to convince me to keep ordering from them, but he shrugged, chef to chef. It's not the same. After he left, Ashley grabbed my shoulders with flour-dusted hands. Please tell me you're considering this. It's a perfect opportunity to get back on your feet, to prove you're more than just sweet dreams. I don't know, I sighed, watching through the window as my parents' car pulled up outside Sweet Dreams across the street. Part of me feels guilty. They're family, after all. Family who betrayed you, Ashley reminded me gently. Look through the window. I could see Mom and Dad rushing into the bakery, their business attire looking out of place in what used to be my flour-dusted domain. Moments later, raised voices carried across the street. Even from here, I could make out words like disaster and losing money. They made their choice, Ashley said softly, squeezing my shoulder. Now it's time to make yours. I pulled Mark's card from my apron pocket, running my thumb over the embossed lettering that spoke of real culinary credentials. Maybe it was time to stop watching my old life crumble and start building something new, something that honored both my CIA training and my grandmother's legacy. At Ashley's Cafe, Mrs. Peterson's visit. The bell chimed again, and Mrs. Peterson walked in, her face lighting up like a perfectly timed souffle when she saw me. Sarah, I heard rumors you were here. Please tell me you're baking again. I glanced at Ashley, who nodded encouragingly, her eyes twinkling with the same excitement she'd shown when we'd first met in culinary school. Actually, Mrs. Peterson, I straightened my apron with the same pride I'd felt when I first earned my CIA whites. I might be starting something new. How would you like to be my first taste tester? Reflection. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about watching others fail. It's about refusing to let them stop you from succeeding. 1 month later, restaurant success. Mark's dessert collaboration turned into something bigger than I expected. After just a month of supplying Bella Luna, word spread through the city's culinary community like the aroma of fresh-baked bread. Soon I was juggling orders from 3 different high-end restaurants while still working at Ashley's Cafe. Something had to give. You need your own space, Ashley said one morning, watching me frantically prep another batch of tiramisu for Mark's dinner service. My kitchen's too small for both of us now. You're operating at a level way beyond a cafe kitchen. The bell chimed, and Emma walked in, looking nothing like the confident investment banker who'd taken over my bakery. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usually perfect suit was dusted with flour. Wrong kind of flour, I noted automatically, my CA training kicking in. Can we talk? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Please. Ashley squeezed my shoulder and disappeared into the back, leaving us alone with a lingering scent of fresh-baked pastries and unspoken words. Emma slumped onto a bar stool, her MBA perfect posture crumbling like over-baked shortbread. The bank called yesterday, she said, staring at her hands that were now showing the rough signs of kitchen work. We're 3 months behind on payments. I continued whisking my tiramisu filling, putting more force than necessary into the motion. That sounds like a you problem. At Ashley's cafe, confrontation with Emma. Sarah, please. Emma's voice cracked like a poorly tempered chocolate. I'm drowning here. Just, just give me the apple turnover recipe. That's all I'm asking for. Mrs. Peterson's Bridge Club used to order 3 dozen every week, I said, pouring the silky mixture into serving cups with the precision I'd learned at CIA. And now they order them from me, through Bella Luna. Emma's face crumpled like a failed puff pastry. Mom and Dad were wrong, okay? Is that what you want to hear? They were wrong about everything. But they're going to lose their retirement savings if the bakery fails. The whisk clattered into the sink. Don't you dare try to guilt me about their retirement, I said, my voice sharp as a chef's knife. They chose this. They chose to back your MBA over my culinary degree. What's going on here? Victoria's voice cut through the tension as she sauntered in. Family reunion? Get out, Victoria! I snapped, my hands instinctively gripping the edge of the prep counter. Now, Victoria smiled, pulling up a seat next to Emma with the calculated grace of a practiced predator. I'm just here as a concerned neighbor. Word on the street is Sweet Dreams is circling the drain. My offer still stands, Sarah, though the price has dropped, considering the circumstances. Emma's head whipped around so fast, I thought she might get whiplash. What offer? Oh, didn't your sister tell you? Victoria's voice dripped with false sweetness, like over-sugared icing. I offered to buy her recipes. Could have saved your little bakery, but she refused. Something about family loyalty. Her laugh sounded like nails on a kitchen slate. You did what? Emma stood up so fast her stool toppled over. You'd sell our family recipes to her, but not help your own sister? They're my recipes. I slammed my hands on the counter, feeling the cool marble beneath my palms. Grandma taught them to me during my summers home from CIA. I spent years perfecting them, studying the chemistry, understanding the techniques. You want to talk about family? Where was family when you and Mom and Dad took everything I built? At Ashley's cafe, rising tension. Ladies, Ashley's voice cut through our argument like a hot knife through butter. Take it outside. You're scaring the customers. I hadn't even noticed the small crowd of morning regulars watching us like they were judging a cooking competition. Emma grabbed her designer purse, tears streaming down her face, smudging her perfect makeup. Fine. Keep your precious recipes. I hope they keep you warm at night while your family loses everything. She stormed out, nearly colliding with Mark, who was just walking in. Victoria stood up, smoothing her couture skirt with manicured hands. Think about my offer, Sarah. Family drama is so messy. I'm offering you a clean break. She clicked her way out, leaving behind the artificial scent of expensive perfume. After she left, Mark approached the counter cautiously, like approaching a hot stove. Bad time? Perfect time, actually. I wiped my hands on my apron, feeling the familiar texture of the professional-grade fabric. Remember that empty storefront you mentioned, the one 2 doors down from Bella Luna? Is it still available? Mark's face lit up like a perfectly browned meringue. It is. Are you thinking what I think you're thinking? I'm done hiding in other people's kitchens. I pulled out my grandmother's recipe book, its pages worn with love and use. It's time to build something new. Ashley squealed from behind the counter, nearly knocking over a display of freshly baked croissants. I knew it. You're opening your own place. If the numbers work out, I said, already mentally calculating startup costs against my CIA savings. And if you'll help me, Ashley, I'll need someone who knows both the business and the craft. Ashley grinned, flour dusting her cheek. I actually earned my experience in the kitchen instead of just framing it on a wall. Mark pulled out his phone, his chef's efficiency taking over. I know the building owner. Let me make a call. At Ashley's Cafe, making plans. As Mark stepped away to make the call, I watched through the window as Emma trudged back to Sweet Dreams. Mom was waiting outside, her perfect posture, a stark contrast to Emma's defeated slouch, and I could see them arguing on the sidewalk. Part of me wanted to run over there to fix everything with a handful of recipes and a hug. But then I remembered the day they took my dream away, how they'd planned it all behind my back over corporate lunches, convinced my CIA training wasn't enough. Good news, Mark returned, grinning like he'd just earned his first Michelin star. The owner's willing to meet tomorrow. Says he's a fan of your tiramisu. Ashley hugged me tight, smelling of vanilla and coffee. This is it, Sarah. Your fresh start. Looking at my reflection in the cafe window, I saw something I hadn't seen since leaving Sweet Dreams. The fire in my eyes that had gotten me through CIA, through professional kitchens, through building my first bakery. Hope rising like perfectly proofed dough. Let's do this, I said, clutching my recipe book, the one that held not just recipes, but years of culinary training and family tradition. Time to show this town what real artisanal baking tastes like. Opening day. Opening day of Second Chances, patisserie arrived with a line stretching around the block. Ashley had worked her social media magic, and Mark had spread the word through his restaurant connections. The aroma of fresh-baked viennoiserie wafted through the open door as I arranged the display cases, my hands trembling slightly despite years of professional kitchen experience. They're here for you, Mark said, bringing in another tray of freshly baked croissants, their layers perfectly laminated thanks to the techniques I'd mastered at CIA. Not your family name, not your old bakery. They're here for your craft. The bell chimed as Mrs. Peterson pushed her way to the front of the line. I simply couldn't wait another minute. My bridge club will be thrilled to have your apple turnovers back. No one else understands the importance of proper lamination. First customer gets a free box, I said, packaging up a dozen still warm turnovers, made with the same precision I'd learned in culinary school. First morning rush. The morning rush was everything I dreamed of during those long nights studying at CIA and beyond. Ashley worked the register while I kept the display cases stocked, falling into the familiar rhythm of a professional kitchen. Then the bell chimed again, and my mother's voice cut through the happy chatter like a dull knife. "So this is why you wouldn't help us," she said, standing in the doorway with Dad, both looking out of place in their corporate attire. "You were planning this all along." The customers fell silent. Ashley stepped forward, protective as any chef de cuisine, but I touched her arm. "I've got this," I said, wiping my hands on my professional-grade apron. "Mom, Dad, would you like to order something?" "Order something?" Dad's face reddened like an overcooked lobster. "Your sister is about to lose everything, and you're opening a competing patisserie?" Actually, Mark stepped out from the kitchen, his executive chef presence commanding attention. Sarah's not competing with anyone. She's creating something new, something authentic to her CIA training. Dad's eyes narrowed. And who are you? Mark Zimmerman, executive chef of Bella Luna, he said, and glanced at me, taking my flour-dusted hand. And someone who recognizes true culinary talent. The gesture wasn't lost on my mother. Her eyes widened like overproofed brioche. You're dating him? Is that what this is about? No, Mom. This is about me finally doing what I should have done months ago, standing up for my craft. Your sister's bakery is being foreclosed on next week, Dad said, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. Does that mean nothing to you? Before I could respond, Victoria pushed her way into the shop, waving a stack of papers like a particularly aggressive health inspector. Well, isn't this cozy? The prodigal pastry chef's triumphant return. Get out, Victoria, Mark and I said simultaneously, our voices carrying the authority of professional kitchen command. Confrontation at second chances. Oh, I don't think so. Victoria pulled out a stack of papers with the same flourish she probably used to present overpriced menu items. I just bought Sweet Dreams' debt from the bank. The bakery belongs to me now. The room spun like a stand mixer on high speed. You what? Victoria smiled like sweetener masquerading as sugar. Unless you're willing to negotiate your recipes for your sister's freedom? Seems fair, doesn't it? Don't you dare. Mark started, but I squeezed his hand. Let me handle this. I walked around the counter to face Victoria, channeling every ounce of professional confidence I'd gained in culinary school and high-end kitchens. You really want my recipes? Fine. But first, let's see if you can handle them. I grabbed a spare chef's coat from the hook. Right now, you and me, in the kitchen. If you can recreate my apple turnover perfectly, with proper lamination and temperature control, the recipes are yours. Victoria's smile faltered like a fallen souffle. Don't be ridiculous. I'm a businesswoman, not a pastry chef. Exactly. I turned to my parents. That's what none of you ever understood. These recipes aren't just words on paper. They're years of culinary training, of understanding the chemistry, of knowing exactly when something feels right. Sarah. Emma's voice came from the doorway. She looked exhausted, her investment banker polish completely faded. I'm sorry for everything. The shop was silent as Emma walked to the counter, picked up an apple turnover, and took a bite. Tears welled in her eyes. It's exactly like Grandma used to make, she whispered. The lamination, the balance of spices. Because Grandma taught me more than recipes, I said, feeling the weight of my CA diploma behind my words. She taught me that success isn't about business plans or MBAs. It's about passion, dedication, and proper technique. The confrontation continues. Victoria scoffed, her designer heel tapping against the floor like a metronome, counting down her patience. How touching. But I still own Sweet Dreams' debt. Actually, Mark pulled out his phone. Chef's efficiency in full display. You don't. I just got confirmation from my lawyer. Second Chances LC just bought that debt at a very reasonable price, considering the bakery's current state. Victoria's face turned the color of overcooked macaron shells. You can't. I can. I cut her off with the precision of a sharp pastry knife. And I did. Now, get out of my professional kitchen. As Victoria stormed out, I turned to my family. Sweet Dreams isn't gone, but things need to change. What are you suggesting? Dad asked, his corporate armor finally cracking. A fresh start for all of us. I looked at Emma. You want to learn the recipes? Really learn them? I'll teach you. But no shortcuts, no corporate strategies. We do this right, starting with proper culinary fundamentals. Emma nodded, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her designer suit. I'd like that. The customers burst into applause, and Mrs. Peterson dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Just like those cooking competition shows, she sniffled, but better. Mark pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my temple that smelled of fresh herbs and possibility. You're amazing, you know that? Looking around at my new patisserie, at Ashley's proud smile, at my humbled family, and at the line of customers still stretching down the block, I finally felt at peace. Sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't in getting even, it's in rising above, like a perfectly executed souffle. 3 weeks later, late night at Second Chances. Teaching Emma wasn't easy. 3 weeks into our new arrangement, she still couldn't get the apple turnover dough right. It's too sticky again, she groaned, her formerly perfect manicure now dusted with premium flour. We were in Second Chance's kitchen after hours, and the counter looked like a war zone of failed lamination attempts. You're rushing it, I said, watching her struggle with the techniques I'd learned at CIA. The dough needs time to rest between folds. Temperature control is crucial for proper lamination. Time we don't have, she snapped, her investment banker's efficiency clashing with pastry's demands. The morning rush at Sweet Dreams starts in 6 hours, and we have nothing to sell. I stepped back, crossing my arms. Then maybe we should close Sweet Dreams for a few weeks while you learn properly. You can't rush professional pastry techniques. We can't. Emma's voice cracked like overbaked cookies. There's something I haven't told you. Something Mom and Dad have been hiding. Before she could continue, Mark burst through the kitchen door, his chef's face pale as uncooked dough. Sarah, you need to see this. He held up his phone, showing a local restaurant news website. The headline made my stomach drop like a fallen cake. Local bakery owner accused of health code violations. Victoria, I growled, scanning the article with the same intensity I used to study pastry textbooks. She's claiming she found rats in Sweet Dreams when she inspected it during the debt purchase. It's not true, Emma said quickly, her hands trembling like a novice with a piping bag. She's lying. Of course she is, Ashley chimed in from the doorway. But the health department has to investigate any complaint. They'll shut Sweet Dreams down during the inspection. Late night crisis. Emma slumped against the counter, leaving a flower handprint on her black designer pants. That's not even the worst part. Mom and Dad. They took out a second mortgage on their house to keep Sweet Dreams afloat. If we close, even for a week, they'll lose everything. I stared at the mess of failed dough on the counter, then at my sister's defeated face. My CA training warring with family loyalty. Finally, I made a decision. I grabbed my recipe book and a pen. Here, I said, writing quickly with the same precision I used in my production notes. This is the apple turnover recipe. The real one, with all my culinary school modifications. Emma's eyes widened like rising brioche. But you said, I know what I said, But this isn't about teaching you a lesson anymore. I tore out the page. Take it to Sweet Dreams. Make a batch for tomorrow's inspection. Sarah, no, Ashley protested, her cafe owner instincts kicking in. She needs to learn proper technique. And she will, I said firmly, channeling my old chef instructors. But right now, Sweet Dreams needs professional quality product to sell during the health inspection. Perfect product. Emma reached for the recipe with trembling hands, but I held it back. On one condition. You tell Mom and Dad everything. No more secrets. No more hidden debts. We deal with this as a family, with the same honesty we demand in a professional kitchen. Okay, she whispered, taking the recipe like it was spun sugar. But what if I mess it up? I checked my watch, the same one I'd bought myself after graduating CIA. It's only 9 o'clock. I'll come help you make the first batch. We'll do it right, step by step. Mark grabbed his car keys, the same efficiency he showed running his kitchen. I'll drive you both. At Sweet Dreams, late night. When we arrived at Sweet Dreams, Mom and Dad were still there, arguing over paperwork spread across my old prep station. They fell silent when we walked in, like a souffle deflating in a slammed oven. Sarah? Mom looked between us, confusion written across her face. What's going on? Damage control, I said, pulling out professional mixing bowls. At least they hadn't replaced those. Victoria's trying to shut us down with fake health code violations. But first, Emma has something to tell you. As Emma confessed about the mounting debts and Victoria's threats, I started measuring ingredients. The familiar motions calmed me, even in this kitchen that wasn't mine anymore. Why didn't you tell us how bad it was? Dad asked, his CEO voice reduced to a whisper. Why didn't you tell me about the second mortgage? Emma shot back, her Wall Street confidence crumbling. Because we were all too proud to admit we were wrong, I said, cutting cold butter into flour with practiced precision. But that stops now. Mom, start cleaning everything to professional standards. Dad, call your friend at the health department. Warn them about Victoria's false claims. Emma, watch what I'm doing. Really watch. For the next 2 hours, we worked together like a well-run kitchen brigade. I showed Emma the subtle signs of perfect dough, the exact way to fold for proper lamination, the precise temperature needed for that signature flake. Mom cleaned until the kitchen sparkled like a 3-star operation, while Dad made calls to everyone he knew who might help. As the first batch of turnovers came out of the oven, golden and perfect as any I'd made at CIA, Mrs. Peterson appeared at the back door. I saw the lights on, she said, sniffing the air appreciatively. And I saw that horrible article. The Bridge Club's ready to testify about the quality of this place, if needed. Late-night confrontation. That won't be necessary, came a voice from behind her. Victoria stood there, looking furious as an overboiled caramel. You're supposed to be closed during a health inspection. There won't be an inspection, Dad said, hanging up his phone with newfound confidence. The health department knows about your false claims. They're launching an investigation into you instead. Victoria's face went from red to white like badly tempered chocolate. You can't prove anything. Actually, Mark stepped forward, holding up his phone with a chef's perfect timing. I recorded your entire conversation with Sarah about buying the debt and trying to steal her recipes. Attempted extortion is a serious crime in the culinary world. As Victoria stormed off, Mom turned to me, tears in her eyes like sugar crystals. "We don't deserve your help." "No," I agreed, pulling another perfect batch from the oven, their aroma filling the kitchen with memories of culinary school and long nights of practice. But family isn't about deserving. It's about forgiveness and maybe a few secret recipes. 6 weeks later, Second Chance's kitchen. "We need to talk about expansion," Mark said one morning, as we prepared for another busy day in Second Chance's kitchen. The morning light filtered through the windows, catching the professional equipment I'd carefully selected. "Expansion?" I nearly dropped the mixing bowl I was holding, my CI training barely saving it. "We've barely been open 3 months, and we're already turning people away." Ashley chimed in, waving her tablet with entrepreneurial excitement. "Plus, the food critic from the city paper is coming next week. If they give us a good review." Second Chance's kitchen. Morning meeting. The kitchen door burst open, and Emma rushed in, clutching a stack of papers with the same intensity she used to reserve for investment portfolios. "Emergency family meeting now." "I'll handle the front," Ashley said, squeezing my shoulder as she left, the scent of fresh-baked brioche trailing behind her. Emma spread the papers across the prep table, her hands now showing the calluses of real kitchen work. "Remember that investment company that approached Sweet Dreams last year, the one I turned down because I thought my MBA could handle everything?" I nodded, scanning the documents with the same attention I'd give a complex recipe. My heart stopped when I saw the numbers. "They're back," Emma continued, her voice carrying the excitement of a perfect bake. "But they're not interested in Sweet Dreams anymore. They want to franchise Second Chances." Mark whistled low, like steam escaping a pressure cooker. "That's a lot of zeros." "They want to open 5 locations across the city," Emma explained, her business acumen finally finding its proper place. "Using your recipes, your techniques, everything. But here's the key. They want you to maintain complete creative control. I'd handle the business side, reporting to you." I stared at my sister. "You'd work for me?" "With you," she corrected, smile lines replacing her old stress wrinkles. "Look, I've learned a lot these past weeks. I'm good at business strategy, marketing, numbers, but you're the heart of this operation. We could be an amazing team if we actually work together instead of against each other." The kitchen door opened again, and Mom appeared, her face tight with worry. "Your father's having chest pains." Second Chance's kitchen. Family crisis. Everything stopped. "What? Is he okay?" "We're on our way to the doctor now," Mom said quickly, her perfectly manicured nails gripping the doorframe. "But the stress of almost losing the house, the bakery drama, it's taking its toll." After they left, I slumped against the counter, the cool stainless steel grounding me like my first day in culinary school. I thought things were getting better. "They are," Emma insisted, her voice carrying the same confidence she used to save for boardroom presentations. "Sweet Dreams is stable now that we're working together, but Mom and Dad aren't getting any younger. This franchise deal, it could set them up for retirement, set all of us up." Mark picked up the contract, his experienced chef's eyes scanning the details. "It's a solid offer, Sarah, but it's your decision." "What if it all falls apart again?" I whispered, the fear of failure as sharp as a new knife. Then we'll handle it together, Emma said, flour dusting her once pristine blazer. No more secrets, remember? The kitchen door swung open once more, and Mrs. Peterson hobbled in, looking distraught. The bridge club is being evicted, she announced. The community center is being sold. Where will we play? Where will we eat your turnovers? I looked at the contract, then at Mrs. Peterson, and suddenly everything clicked like perfectly tempered chocolate. What if we didn't just franchise? I said slowly. What if we transformed Sweet Dreams into something new? A cafe-style community space with meeting rooms upstairs. Emma's eyes lit up like a perfectly timed oven light. The investment could cover the renovation costs. We could keep the original location's character, but make it more versatile. And Second Chances could supply all the baked goods. Planning the future. It's perfect, Mark added, his chef's mind already planning kitchen layouts. Mrs. Peterson clapped her hands with delight. Oh, we could have proper tea service for the bridge club. I picked up a pen, but hesitated. Emma, are you sure about this? Working together. For real this time? More sure than I was about that MBA, she smiled, dusting flour from her suit. Besides, someone needs to keep you from working yourself to death. Those 3 o'clock baking sessions aren't healthy. Speaking of health, Mark interjected, his voice gentle as folded cream. Let's go check on Dad at the hospital. At the hospital, we found Dad arguing with a nurse about wanting to go back to work. He stopped mid-sentence when we walked in, looking smaller in the hospital bed than he ever had in his corporate suits. What are you all doing here? The morning rush. Ashley's handling it, I said, pulling out the contract. We have something to discuss. As we explained the franchise plan and the Sweet Dreams transformation, Dad's heart monitor stayed steady as a perfectly calibrated oven. By the time we finished, he was smiling like he used to when I'd bring him fresh pastries before board meetings. Your grandmother would be proud, he said softly. Not just of the baking, but of how you've both grown. Does this mean you'll finally retire and let us handle things? Mom asked, trying to sound stern but failing like an underproofed bread. Hospital room discussion. Well, Dad adjusted his hospital gown, looking more relaxed than he had in months. Maybe it's time to step back, but I'm still taste testing everything. Deal? Deal, Emma and I said together, sharing a smile that felt as warm as fresh baked bread. Evening at Second Chances. Later that evening, as Mark and I closed up Second Chances, he pulled me close. You know what this means, right? We'll need to expand this kitchen too. I looked around at my patisserie, remembering how it felt to start over after graduating CIA. Change is scary, but necessary, he finished, kissing my flour-dusted cheek. Like letting dough rise, or letting go of old hurts, I added, watching through the window as Emma locked up Sweet Dreams across the street. Sometimes, the best recipes aren't just about ingredients. They're about knowing when to hold on and when to let things transform into something new. Sweet Dreams Grand Reopening. The day of Sweet Dreams' grand reopening as Sweet Dreams Community Cafe arrived with unexpected drama. I was arranging pastries in the new display case, each one reflecting my CIA training, when Victoria stormed in, waving a newspaper like an angry health inspector. What is this? She demanded, slapping the paper down on the counter. The headline read, Local Pastry Empire Expands. Sisters Unite Professional Culinary Arts with Business Savvy. It's called success, Emma said, emerging from the new tea room with the confidence of someone who finally understood both business and baking. You should try earning it honestly sometime. Final confrontation. This was supposed to be my territory. Victoria's voice rose higher than an overproofed brioche. I was going to own this whole block. Is there a problem here? Mark appeared at my side, his executive chef presence filling the room, while Ashley quietly began ushering customers to the cafe area. The problem? Victoria jabbed a finger at me, her manicure as sharp as a paring knife. Is that you're all going to regret this. I have connections, like the health inspector you tried to bribe or the bank manager who reported your attempted extortion. Dad's voice boomed from the entrance. He looked better than he had in weeks, though Mom still hovered anxiously beside him. You can't prove. Actually, a man in a suit stepped forward from the growing crowd of customers. We can. I'm Detective Roberts. We've been investigating complaints about your business practices for months. I watched as Victoria's carefully maintained facade crumbled like an overbaked macaron. This isn't fair. I worked for years to steal other people's hard work? I interrupted, channeling every stern chef instructor I'd ever had. To destroy family businesses? Speaking of business, Emma added, pulling out her tablet with professional precision, you might want to check your stock prices. It seems your investors aren't too happy about the police investigation. Victoria's phone buzzed as she checked it. Her eyes widened in horror, like a pastry chef watching their souffle collapse. Without another word, she turned and fled, nearly knocking over Mrs. Peterson, who was entering with her bridge club. Sweet Dreams Community Cafe, opening day. Oh my, Mrs. Peterson clutched her chest dramatically. Was that dreadful woman causing trouble again? Not anymore. Detective Roberts smiled, tipping his hat before following Victoria out. Well then, Mom clapped her hands, looking more relaxed than she had in months. Shall we get this reopening started properly? The new cafe was everything we'd hoped for. The main floor housed the bakery and cafe, with all equipment meeting professional culinary standards, while upstairs had been transformed into community rooms. The Bridge Club immediately claimed their favorite spot, complete with a dedicated tea service station I designed based on my training. Try these, I said, bringing them a fresh batch of apple turnovers. Emma made them herself. Mrs. Peterson took a bite and closed her eyes in bliss. Perfect, just like yours, dear. The lamination is exquisite. Because she finally learned to be patient with the dough. I smiled at my sister, who was showing Dad how to use the new point-of-sale system with the same precision she once used for investment portfolios. Sarah, Mark called from the kitchen, his voice carrying the authority of an executive chef. The news crew is here for the interview. Both of you go, Mom insisted when I looked at Emma. This is your story to tell. As the camera crew set up, Mark squeezed my hand. Ready to show the world what happens when culinary expertise and business acumen work together instead of against each other? The interview. The interview started with basic questions about the expansion plan, but then turned personal. There were rumors of a family feud, the reporter said. What changed? Emma and I looked at each other, sharing the kind of understanding that only comes from hours in a kitchen together. We learned that success tastes better when shared, I said, my CIA pin gleaming on my chef's coat, and that sometimes the best business strategy is simply being honest with each other," Emma added, flour dusting her now casual blazer. Plus, Ashley chimed in from behind the counter. "It helps when the local culinary mafia gets caught trying to sabotage you." Everyone laughed, and the tension broke like a perfectly cracked cream brulee. The reporter asked for a demonstration, so I taught her how to fold a turnover, while Emma explained our community-focused business model. "One last question," the reporter said, flour on her nose. "What's next for the sisters behind this sweet success story?" Before we could answer, Dad called out from the register. "They're going to let their old man retire in peace, eventually." "Eventually," Mom corrected, bringing him his heart medication with a glass of water. "Actually." Mark stepped forward, taking my hand. "We might have another announcement soon." He patted his pocket meaningfully, and my heart skipped like a mixer on high speed. "Really?" Ashley squealed, nearly dropping a tray of fresh-baked cookies. "Cut that last bit," the reporter told her cameraman with a wink. "Save it for the wedding announcement story." Reflecting on success. As the crew packed up, I looked around at my family. Mom fussing over Dad's medication. Emma teaching Mrs. Peterson's granddaughter how to properly steam milk for tea, with the precision she once reserved for market analyses. Ashley and Mark playfully, arguing about wedding cake flavors before I'd even said yes. "You know," Emma said, joining me at the counter, flour dusting her once pristine suit, "I think Grandma knew exactly what she was doing when she only taught you those recipes." "What do you mean?" "She knew you'd be the one to bring us all back together." Emma bumped my shoulder. "Even if we had to fall apart first." The afternoon sun streamed through the new cafe windows, catching the gold lettering that read, "Sweet Dreams Community Cafe, where family recipes meet professional expertise." Below it, in smaller script, "A Second Chances Partnership." Sometimes the sweetest victories come not from proving others wrong, but from proving to yourself that forgiveness can be the secret ingredient to success. Wedding preparations. "You can't bake your own wedding cake," Ashley protested, snatching my recipe book from my hands. "It's bad luck or something." Actually, Emma chimed in from behind her laptop, where she was reviewing our latest expansion numbers. "I think that's wedding dresses, not cakes." We were sitting in Sweet Dreams' renovated tea room after hours, surrounded by wedding magazines and sample menus. Through the window, I could see Second Chances lit up across the street, where Mark was handling the evening rush with the efficiency of a seasoned executive chef. Evening in Sweet Dreams. Besides, I reached for my recipe book again, its pages now showing signs of both professional use and loving wear. Grandma always said she wanted her recipes at my wedding. "Grandma would want you to relax and enjoy your day," Mom said, bringing in a fresh pot of tea served with the elegance she once reserved for corporate functions. "Let us handle the cake." "Us?" Ashley raised an eyebrow, her cafe owner's skepticism showing. "Well," Emma closed her laptop, her eyes showing the same determination she once brought to Wall Street. "I have been practicing with my CIA-trained sister and with Sarah's recipes." "No." I stood up, grabbing my professional apron. "I'm going to show you something." I led them into the kitchen and pulled out a worn envelope from behind the spice rack. Inside was a yellowed piece of paper covered in our grandmother's handwriting. "What's this?" Mom asked, adjusting her reading glasses. Grandma's wedding cake recipe. Her actual wedding cake recipe, not the one she gave out at church bake sales. I smoothed the paper on the counter, handling it with the same care I'd learned to use with delicate pastry. I found it last week while organizing her old recipe box. Mom's hands trembled as she touched the paper. I remember this cake from their 50th anniversary. Look at the note at the bottom. I pointed to the faded ink where our grandmother had written, "For my Sarah to share when she finds someone who appreciates her craft as much as her grandfather appreciated mine. And for Emma when she learns that true success comes from the heart, not just the head." She knew, Emma whispered, her MBA confidence softening. Even back then, she knew we'd need to learn these lessons. Late night baking. So, I pulled out my professional mixing bowls, the ones I'd brought from CIA. Want to learn Grandma's last recipe together. For the next few hours, we worked as a team. Emma measured ingredients with the same precision she once used for financial analyses, while Ashley documented everything with her cafe manager's attention to detail. Mom shared stories about Grandma, filling the kitchen with laughter and happy tears. The bell chimed from the cafe, and Mark walked in with Dad. "Something smells amazing," Dad said, then stopped short when he saw the recipe. "Is that Grandma's wedding cake?" Mom smiled, wiping flour from her cheek. "The real one." Mark wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder to read the recipe. His chef's whites brushed against my apron. "Your grandmother sounds like she was quite the culinary pioneer." "She was," Dad said softly. "And she'd be proud of all of this. Not just the bakeries, but how you girls have grown." The timer dinged, and we gathered around the oven as I pulled out the first layer. The rich vanilla and almond scent filled the kitchen, the same scent that had first inspired me to attend CIA. "It's perfect," Mom breathed, her eyes misting. "Almost," I said, reaching for the frosting bowl I'd prepared using professional pastry techniques. "Emma, want to do the honors?" My sister's eyes widened. "Me? But it's your wedding cake. And you're my sister," I smiled. "Plus you've got the steadier hands today, thanks to all our practice sessions." The final touches. As Emma carefully frosted the layers with techniques I'd taught her, Mrs. Peterson appeared at the kitchen door. "I thought I smelled something familiar," she said, sniffing the air appreciatively. "Your grandmother used to make this for very special occasions. Would you like to be our taste tester?" I offered. "One last time, for old time's sake." Mrs. Peterson took a small bite of the sample slice and closed her eyes, transported back in time. "Oh my, it's exactly as I remember. The texture, the balance. Your grandmother always said this recipe had a secret ingredient," Ashley guessed. "Love?" "No," Mrs. Peterson laughed. "Patience, the patience to learn proper technique, to wait for things to develop as they should." Mark squeezed my hand. "Like waiting for your sister to learn the true value of culinary training, or waiting for the right moment to start over, or waiting for someone who understands that success isn't just about business," I added, while watching Emma put the finishing touches on the cake with newfound skill. "It's about building something meaningful together," Emma said, stepping back to admire her work with a professional's eye. The finished cake stood proudly on the counter, a testament to everything we'd been through. Not just a wedding cake, but a symbol of healing, of family coming together, of lessons learned and skills mastered. To Grandma, Dad raised his teacup. Who knew exactly what she was doing when she passed these recipes down? To second chances, Emma smiled, her hands now as confident with pastry cream as they once were with spreadsheets. To love, Mark kissed my flour-dusted cheek. To all of it, I said, looking around at my family. The one I was born into, and the one I'd chosen, gathered in this kitchen that had seen both heartbreak and healing. Because sometimes the best recipes are the ones that take time to perfect, whether you learned them at CIA or at your grandmother's side.